right, folks, welcome everybody to the May Employee Forum meeting. We are closing out another academic year, and it's just such a joy to be in community with all of you here. And we're getting ready to welcome some new delegates. So other than welcoming everyone to the call, I wanted to send a particular welcome to our new delegates and thank you for joining us in the work of the Employee Forum. We're so glad to have you. Yeah, and with that said, I'm going to share my screen really quickly, so give me a few seconds to do so, but we're going to lead each other in a recitation of the delegate charge, and our interim chancellor, Lee Roberts, is here with us to help us do that today and make sure we are charged with the work we're going to be doing over the next year. So this is always really touchy. Matt, let me share my screen really quickly because I've got it in like one slide that's easily viewable and I don't have to scroll. I will say this is really tough via Zoom because it's a lot when people unmute themselves and kind of start saying things. So stay muted, but just please do read along with us as we recite the charge together. And let me share my screen. So, all right, can folks see the slide? Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. All right, folks. Well, like I said, if you could stay muted, but we'll go ahead and read through the delegate charge together. So this is the delegate charge of the Employee Forum. I share the Employee Forum's vision to seek to continually improve the quality of life at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for its staff, students, and faculty through mutual understanding, recognition of staff contributions, and respect for the worth of the individual. I promise to seek out the issues, interests, ideas, and participation of staff, and to bring items needing further consideration to the forum's attention. I also will endeavor to develop a greater understanding of the university's operations and its personnel policies. I will work to develop proactive, progressive recommendations and advocate these to the administration and to staff, and to provide an effective two-way communication link between the administration and the staff. I will help foster an open, positive environment throughout the university and will support achievement of the university's mission of teaching, research, and public service. Hooray! All right, folks. Thank you again. Like I said, this is really important work that we're doing here together, so it's just such a joy to do that with all of you all. But with that said, I want to welcome Interim Chancellor Lee Roberts to join us for our traditional Chancellor Roundtable. We're so glad to have you here with us, Lee, and I wanted to give you some time to share some remarks, and then we'll have some time for questions.
Well, Katie, thank you, and good morning, everyone, and particularly welcome to the new delegates. Thank you for taking on this additional responsibility on behalf of the university. I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for questions. I just wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, we obviously have commencement coming up on Saturday, the first Saturday night commencement that anyone can remember. And it is difficult to overstate how much work commencement takes from people across the university here. Obviously, our facilities team, obviously our events team, but hundreds, if not thousands of other people as well, just involved in the planning and preparation and execution of this really significant event. I think it takes on additional significance this year because of what this class, the class of 2024, has been through. So my wife Liza and I, we have a child a year older than this class, and she had some of her college experience affected by the pandemic, but a pretty intact high school experience. We also have a son a year younger than this class, and he had some of his high school experience messed up, but a pretty intact college experience. This class right in the middle, I've got two nephews in this class, and they're the ones who didn't have a high school graduation, didn't have a prom, didn't have a spring sports season, and then they got here to Carolina and we sent them home after 2 weeks. And so they've had both the rites and passages of high school affected and all of the fun and traditional experiences of a freshman year in college badly affected as well. And so I really hope for them that we have a joyous and celebratory commencement. I've spent a lot of time recently at a number of graduation celebrations around our scholarship programs, and we have an enormous number of first-generation college students at Carolina, as everyone knows, and for them, graduation is one of the most important events for not just for the students, but for their families. And so I'm really looking forward to it. I hope and believe that it will be peaceful and joyous. And I really want to thank everyone who has put in so much work into making commencement happen, especially on a Saturday night. And I also recognize that the big commencement is just one of dozens of events that have already started and that are happening around campus, all of which take an enormous amount of work. I also want to mention the events of last week, and again, eager to take any questions about that. So we have, as hopefully everyone knows, not just a legal and constitutional obligation to uphold not only free speech, but peaceful protest. And the obligation goes beyond law and the Constitution, but is our obligation and our noble tradition as the nation's first public university. And everyone here in South Building, and I think everyone across the university respects that, honors that, and admires that. We do have time, place, and manner restrictions. They're, in my view, very reasonable. You can't camp on the quad. The quad is shared space. You can't appropriate it for a particular group, no matter what group that is. You can't take down the American flag and put up another flag, whether it's the Confederate flag or the Palestinian flag or the French flag or the South Carolina flag. There's only one flag that flies there, and to put up another flag is also I think impinges on others' rights. And so I think everyone's aware of the action that we took. I am happy to hear people's views about the student conduct decisions. I am told that there's very little I can say in response under federal law, that under FERPA, which protects student disciplinary records. I regret that. Just like to be as transparent as possible about what we've done, but the consistent legal advice we've gotten is that I can't say very much about student disciplinary proceedings. So again, I'm eager to hear people's thoughts about that, but please forgive me for not being able to say very much in response on that particular topic. I'd note that we've had, by my count, 4 entirely peaceful protests on the Gaza issue since last Tuesday here on campus, all of which were completely within the law, within our policies, very well attended, and I think that's encouraging. I think it's encouraging and is to be encouraged. So I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see peaceful demonstrations and protests arise, and I'm thankful that, again, to everyone who's focused on helping graduation come off smoothly. So with that, I'm here to answer questions that are on people's minds about commencement, about the protests, or about anything else. And thank you all again for just taking the time to be here. I know it's a very busy time of year.
Thank you, Lee. We did have a question in the chat around commencement and the protests. So it says, will there be any discussion with seniors to ensure that no political statements, i.e. flags or signs, take place during commencement? This should be an occasion for celebration, not division.
So I couldn't agree more with the sentiment. You're not allowed to bring anything larger than 8.5 by 11, a standard size sheet of paper into commencement onto the field as a student. And so students can decorate their caps, they can wave a sign of that size, but You can't bring in flags, you can't bring in signs on sticks, and we're going to enforce that policy.
Great. Others who have questions, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself.
I have two questions.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Thanks for joining us, Interim Chancellor Roberts. My understanding is that law enforcement were brought in from other UNC system schools for this issue. And my first question is, what is why were they brought and what was the reasoning for that? And then additionally, in some of the videos that I've seen online, it looks like, I don't know if they were campus police or system police from other schools, but it looks like there was some use of force concerns that have been brought up. And I'm wondering, you can't talk about student discipline, obviously, but these aren't students, these are professional law enforcement officers.
Yeah, so two questions there, and I think there's two parts to the first question, which I would identify as why did we need extra police, and why were those police UNC system police? And the need for extra police, we were consistently advised by our campus police chief, who, as some of you may know, came from the city of Greensboro, has experience in a big city police force, that the way to maximize the chance of keeping a protest, a arrest around a protest, peaceful and non-confrontational, is to have as many police as possible. The way those situations go bad, as I think we saw at some other campuses, is when the police feel outnumbered. And that's when they feel that's when they feel compelled to use other tactics. And obviously we had a little bit of that. There were a couple of uses of pepper spray, not in the original arrest, but in the afternoon around the flag. But the strong advice from the police department was that our campus police department was that the more officers we had, the lower the likelihood of the police needing to use pepper spray or tear gas or anything like that, which stands to reason. Why UNC campus police? Because they are the ones who are trained to work with student protesters, to be on college campuses, unlike most other police forces. So one thing we've seen in plenty of other schools is you have a relatively small campus police force, and then the next step is a big city police force that not only isn't trained to deal with student protesters, but doesn't have a lot of patience with them. My son goes to Tulane in New Orleans. That's exactly the situation there. Small campus police force, and then the city of New Orleans police force is coming in without a lot of patience or training. Same thing at GW, same thing at Columbia. So same thing at UCLA. So I actually think we're fortunate to have recourse to these other UNC system police forces who are campus police as opposed to a big city police force. On your second question, I've obviously heard some of the reports of the police behaving inappropriately and or with excessive force. I do think that there have been some complaints lodged about that, and there is a very specified, well-known process for handling that, and those complaints will be handled in that process. I think one positive fact is that this whole event was extremely well documented. The students all had phones. Most of the other protesters had phones. Most of the police, almost all of the police, were wearing body cameras. So there's an enormous amount of footage around this that should help us get to the facts and the appropriate response for any disciplinary issue involving the police.
Thank you.
I had a couple of things, but I do want to welcome others to chime in. The first is more of a comment. So I had the opportunity yesterday, along with several other faculty and staff leaders across campus, to meet with Interim Chancellor Roberts and his administration and to talk about some of these tough issues and the incidents of last week. And one of the things I brought up at that meeting was the context around which we started this year, which we had a heavy police presence on our campus at the beginning of our year, which was a traumatic experience, and the police needed to be there to keep us safe. But I'm heavily recognizing that it was a very traumatic way to end our year, to bring another heavy police force onto campus to bookend our year, which re-traumatized some folks who were on campus, whether it be faculty, staff, students, et cetera. So I just say that, and I brought that forward to the conversation yesterday. It's just a really important piece of how folks are reacting to this situation, which is a really tough thing to deal with when we were dealing with the context of what happened to us in the fall. So that's one thing. My other second point, there was a daily Tar Heel op-ed around the tent encampment, actually the week before, where a grounds employee kind of put out an op-ed talking about putting grounds employees in the position of having to go and take down signs or take down tents. And it put them in an awkward position. And I think I'd love to make sure that we work with the administration to make sure that we're not putting our lower paid kind of boots on the ground employees in the middle of some of these kind of really tense situations. We have trained professionals, whether it be our UNC Police Department or others, that have the tools and capabilities to make sure that the things don't escalate, and that they have the training and knowledge to make sure that they are enforcing policy, whereas our lower paid employees don't have that same context or ability. So I just wanted to say that and make sure that we brought that to the conversation to make sure we're protecting our staff.
Yeah, Katie, thank you for raising both of those issues. I agreed with you when you made the first point yesterday. I realized that, and I say this as somebody who was not here on campus on August 28th. I have a nephew who's a freshman. He was on campus for it. Obviously, everybody I work with and interact with here at Carolina was on campus for it. And I've talked to a lot of people about it and obviously read a lot about it. I think we learned a lot of lessons from a campus safety and security standpoint, and there's been a formal after action report delivered around that. But I personally was not here, and I understand that it feels different to the people who were. So thank you for that comment. And that's almost everybody besides me. With respect to the use of the facilities people, I agree with you. And the facilities people are not properly trained for that. It's not really in their job description. It's not really a particularly fair position to put them in. It does present a little bit of a conundrum if the facilities people are not the right people, and I think we can all agree that they're not, to be put into that situation. The police are the next logical step. And back to your first point, there's a lot of sensitivity about using the police in a situation like that. They are trained to handle those kinds of situations, and certainly much more so than either the facilities people are, or as I say, than a big city police force is. But there's a lot of sensitivity around using the police in a situation where campus policy has been violated, but where a law hasn't been broken. And so that's something we're going to need to work on, because we don't have great options right now. If we can all agree the facilities folks are not the right people to ask, and there's significant pros and cons to using the police in that situation, what other options do we have? And Katie, I'd really welcome your partnership and that of others in this group in talking through how we address such situations in the future, because I'm not sure we have a terrific answer right now.
Glad to work with you on that for sure. Sarah, I'm going to bring you forward next. Before I move on from this, I do want to recognize that UNC police officers are also UNC staff, and we're here to advocate for them as well. So don't want to put them in a situation where they feel compromised either. So it's a really tough situation that we're going to have to navigate as a community. So Sarah, your hand's up.
Sorry, lowered my hand and forgot to unmute. Good morning, y'all. And I'm brand new, so if I take a misstep, I apologize. I'm getting the hang of this. But I would love to hear you expand a little more on this police are the next logical step statement. We have mental health professionals on campus. We have people who train de-escalation. We have whole schools of like sociology, psychology, support people who I think may be a better next logical step, both because of what Katie mentioned of what this represents for our school and our students based on our very early experience this year. And then also because of the conflict of interest that I feel like is kind of relevant, being that police officers are trained by the IDF and therefore are an actor in kind of what the protest conversation is about. I feel like actually they're the least logical next step. And I just offer that. If you want to expand on that, that's great. But I also, maybe now that I'm saying it out loud, just offering it as a thought point. I don't need an answer right away, but I feel like that is some additional context to be taken into account, is like who these people represent, whether or not they themselves have been these actors or trained in this way.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you for bringing that up. And I was unclear. When I said the police are the next logical step, I just meant for physically taking down the tents, not for the overall interaction. Obviously, the broad interaction needs to be and was controlled by our highly trained student affairs professionals who are interacting routinely with the students from certainly for the first encampment, and for the second encampment, the more significant encampment. Throughout the first few days of the encampment, there was constant dialogue between our dean of students and the rest of her team and the protesters. And one of the aspects of the whole event that was distressing is that on Sunday afternoon, evening, a week ago, is the protesters stopped in most meaningful respects the dialogue with our student affairs folks and started putting the tents back up, and seemed to have taken a deliberate decision to start violating policies that they had been complying with from the beginning of the protest on Friday. Every time they were asked to take down the tents, they did. Every time they were asked to keep their noise below the policy level, they did. And there was a really productive, constructive dialogue from Friday morning through Sunday evening. And then that stopped on Sunday evening. They decided to stop talking to student affairs. They decided to stop complying with the policies that they had been complying with and that they've complied with since. And so thank you again for raising that, because I was just referring to the physical act of taking down the structures and not the broader dialogue with the protesters, which I'm sure we can all agree should be handled by the trained professionals at student affairs.
Great. Keith, you're up next.
Thanks, Katie. Good morning. One, I'm going to circle back to something we were talking about with Audrey. And the increased police presence. I understand that in certain cases, more is better. But most specifically, the bringing in like what you're calling larger city police who are unfamiliar with or not as familiar with dealing with college students in this environment. is there going to be an evaluation or an assessment of how things happened? I personally really, really admire and like Chief James. I think he's wonderful. And I think for the most part, our UNC police are absolutely great. Actually, one of them is one of my favorite people on the entire planet. And I don't say that lightly because, you know, I just don't really like everybody, but one of my favorite people on the entire planet. And they are wonderful. And a lot of the ones I've met are wonderful. But I think we may need to reassess in case anything else happens like this again, that maybe bringing in police officers who are not familiar with college campuses and college situations may not be the best approach. I mean, I know they are most apt and used to dealing with riots and protests in the streets, not on a college campus. So that may have been a misstep on our part as a university, to bring in those officers. I'm not saying that they came in with ill intent, but they may have come in with a lack of skill sets needed to handle this situation. So I think maybe we need to reassess in that area of who we bring in when we have these situations. I understand bringing other UNC system officers in with what they can spare and still leave their campuses safe. I get that. They deal with a lot of the similar things, a lot of people in the same age group with the same similar train of thought. But if you're bringing in people from the city of Charlotte, the city of Greensboro, whatever city, they may not be ready or well equipped to deal with this. So I'm just asking that there be some assessment or evaluation of who we brought in and were they the best fit for this. And secondly, as I read some of the earlier messaging compared to some of the later messaging, I tended to favor the later messaging from the university because it was more expressly saying, we recognize that the upheaval was not caused by all students. Some of the earlier messaging sounded like it was everyone that was there was doing something against university policies or something illegal. And I honestly do not believe that that is true. So I hope that we will continue to express ourselves more along the lines of the later messaging, saying, hey, we did have some people that did some things, and not all of those people were students or even affiliated with the university. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Just to respond to at least a little bit of that. First of all, thank you for your comments about Chief James. I've had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to work closely with Chief James and his team. Katie, thank you for pointing out that they're university employees just like the rest of us are. And I could not be more impressed with his professionalism and expertise and that of his team. I think we're fortunate to have him here. So I appreciate your mentioning that. We're going to do a full after action reporting process that's required in this case. It would be standard in a situation like this, but even if it weren't, I think we would all want that. I think I might even have a meeting today to kick off that process. And so we will do that in a complete and comprehensive fashion, just because anytime you have a situation like this, there are things that you did well and things that you could have done better, and it's important to do your best to learn from them. So we're going to make every effort to do that. As far as other police forces on campus, we did have 2 other police forces on campus aside from other UNC system police. We had Orange County Sheriff's deputies, and we had the North Carolina Highway Patrol. As far as I'm aware, none of them interacted with protesters directly at all. If I'm wrong about that, then someone can correct me, but they were being, back to my earlier point about the police feeling strongly that they needed adequate numbers. They were there to be in reserve, but only used as a reserve. And so the Orange County folks were visible, but again, I'm not sure interacted with any protesters directly. The highway patrol did some traffic control on streets around campus, but I'm not aware of them being used directly in any other way. Our preference in this situation is always going to be to have our campus police first and other campus police second, with any other police forces used as a backup as they were here. Thank you also for your comments about the communications. I agree with you. It's important to stress that the broad majority, not just of the protesters who were at the encampment, but the protesters who we've seen before and since were peaceful and following the rules. And even on the day of the arrests, it's true to say that the only people who were arrested were people who wanted to get arrested. So they were given very clear communication about dispersing, about what would happen if they didn't disperse, multiple warnings. This is all on video. You can see plenty of students standing around, plenty of other protesters standing around, not getting arrested. If you walked away when the police told you to walk away, you were not arrested. And you're right about, I think you were making a point about the makeup of the protesters. Just numerically, 13 of the 36 folks arrested were Carolina students. So that's what, 36%. So Pete, thank you again for the comments.
So Kelsey, you're up next, and then I want to bring in a comment from the chat, and then we'll move to Sarah.
Hey there, yeah. I just kind of wanted to ask, or maybe just put the thought out there. I understand that UNC police probably have more training in this, but I wanted some clarity on their de-escalation training. And also when you call in other police forces and things of that nature, are we ensuring that they've had de-escalation training and just that they really know how to interact in these situations without creating more stress and anxiety? I know for some people, bringing police on campus is very anxious. It can kind of makes people more on edge. And so I want to make sure that we have a process for de-escalation that all of the police officers coming onto campus are aware of and engaged in.
They are trained in de-escalation techniques and in handling student protest. You make a very good point about the consistency of training across UNC system police forces. And they all receive training in this regard, but one thing we've talked about quite a bit since last week is what we can do to make sure that there's a consistent standard of training across system police officers. I think my perception and understanding is that the average level of training is actually quite high, but are we doing it? And they do have combined training at the state police facility in Samarkand, and there's been some money in the budget for that the last several years. But as I say, there's been some discussion about what else can we do to make sure that they all have the highest standard of training, and that the interoperability is what it needs to be. There's already been some conversation with the budget folks at the General Assembly about that, and what else can be done at the system level to ensure that, again, that there is a consistent and high level of training. So I think it's a very good point.
I wanted to bring in one of the comments from the chat, and then Sarah will have time for your question before we close with the Chancellor. Elizabeth DeBose said, I may be significantly out of the loop. You're not, Elizabeth. But have there been any and hopefully realistic and expedient plans and offerings for UNC as a school and an organization to schedule meaningful discussions about the conflict? As in, if protesters organize to protest, opportunities exist to generate and continue a discussion.
Yeah, it's a great point, and something that I and other folks here in South Building have been thinking about, and welcome any suggestions in this regard. It's obviously the wrong time of year to try to set up anything that involves a large number of students. That's and a lot of faculty for that matter. We're not going to have most of those folks around starting next week. But I do think there are a lot of things that we can do before the next school year starts, and certainly after the next school year starts. You know, this isn't our only tool, but it's a new tool and an important tool. We have our new School for Civic Life and Leadership, the whole focus of which is to improve civil discourse. And I've spoken with the new dean there, who's a terrific hire. We brought him over from Duke. He was our #1 pick. He just started in March, about ways that the new school can facilitate dialogue in this regard. And I've noted that while there have been plenty of discussions about this topic, about the Gaza conflict on campus, that while taken as a whole, they might represent a broad range of views, relatively few of the discussions themselves have represented a broad range of views. They've generally been panels and other discussions that represent a particular viewpoint. So I'd like to find ways, this is something we should be able to do as a leading global research university, find ways to use our expertise and all of the resources that we have on this campus to show what a scholarly dialogue around even an issue as sensitive and as high profile as this one can look like. So I welcome any discussion or thoughts about best ways to do that, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot.
All right, it's time for one last question, Sarah.
Thanks, Katie. Interim Chancellor Roberts, I am a staff member at the Campus Y. Can you speak to the communication with impacted facilities and the indefinite closure of our space that seemed to only be reversed after community members and alumni expressed outrage? We're now reopened with limited hours, but as stated in the campus-wide email, our building is being monitored. I understand that students use our facilities for the restrooms, but does that warrant a complete shutdown of our space? As staff, we were kept in the dark about what was happening. Students were coming to us, asking us questions we didn't have answers to. We're also student affairs professionals, and I do believe we could have been leveraged in having some meaningful dialogue with the protesters. Last week, we weren't allowed into our offices. We had to be escorted by administration and police officers to get our own belongings. I would love to just hear from you about your perspective on that experience. We are staff members, just like all of my colleagues here, and I feel like we deserve some communication and some clarity.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you. It does sound like the communication around that could have been better. As far as I'm aware, the reopening wasn't driven by pressure. The closure was, and a number of buildings around the quad were closed. We had a lot of reports of people not just using the bathroom, but sleeping in buildings. There were a number of reports of people coming in the morning and finding people who clearly weren't students. I'm not saying this was specific to the Campus Y. I'm talking about the buildings around the quad, sleeping in bathrooms, a lot of trash and things like that around. And so we closed all the buildings around the quad. I was told that the Campus Y required quite a bit of cleanup. And so we announced Friday it would reopen once the cleanup took place over the weekend, and my understanding is it reopened on Monday. So it does sound like the communication could have been better around that, but it wasn't closed for any kind of punitive reason. It was closed because it was being used, it seemed like, by a lot of folks in a way that I don't think any university building is intended to be used.
Thank you for your response. I appreciate it. It's kind of the most information we've received. And I will just verbalize this, that I was in the building when I was escorted in, and the building was fine. There was no need for whatever the cleanup was over the weekend, but I'll just leave it at that.
And to be clear, I've not been in myself. I've seen photos. I've been told various things by people, but you've been inside it, but I've not.
All right, folks. Well, Lee, again, thank you so much for being with us and hearing us out and answering questions. We always love the Chancellor and Provost roundtables. They're really great and valuable. So we appreciate y'all's continued partnership.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me here. Thank you again to everybody who's worked so hard on not just the commencement itself, but in getting this huge operation through to the end of another semester. It's our 229th academic year, and I think we should all take a significant measure of pride in that. So
Oh, and one more thing in the chat,
Yeah.
sorry, before you
Yeah.
head out. We had a question around stack and kind of reinitializing that, so we can kind of utilize that as another tool to kind of build relationships and trust.
Oh yeah, by all
with
means.
staff. So,
Eager to
we definitely have plans to do that. I think May was tough with commencement season upon us, but we definitely have plans to pick that back up and have Lee interact with stack moving forward. So
Great.
Great.
Thank you all very much again. I really appreciate it.
all right, thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right, folks, we're going to move on to our next section of the agenda. And we have our human resources updates. Becci, thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning.
Morning.
I want to start, well, I realize it's a pretty significant tone change. I want to start by acknowledging that today is North Carolina's State Employee Recognition Day. As you all know, we celebrate this day in the fall when we know that we have all of you around, and we can celebrate with some games and some music, some ice cream, and some fun in the pit. But we don't ever want to miss out on an opportunity to celebrate our colleagues. So I joined the Chancellor, the Governor, and a whole host of others in thanking you for your service to Carolina and to the state on this day. Keith, I'd love to say that it means raises for everyone. I do have to be honest with you. I was a little disappointed to hear that you named somebody else as your favorite person in the whole world, because you've been telling me all this time that I'm your favorite person in the whole world.
I said
which
one
means
of.
you
said
first
one
said
of.
my favorite, and then you qualified it later with one of. Believe me, I was tracking it. And there are a lot of witnesses on this screen, just FYI. But I cannot say that there are raises for everyone today, but I will jump in and say that we are still anticipating the 3% adjustment in July, sorry, not January, July. Some of you have been tracking the state budget news as they've gone into short session, and also as the revenue forecasts have come out. As many of you know, the revenue forecasts are in our state done bipartisanly, so that the budget office works with both parties and evaluates what they anticipate the revenue forecast to be. Generally, they're pretty close. This year, the revenue forecast was about $400 million. The actual outcome was $1 billion over that, which is an enormous amount of money. Many of you saw that the governor came out with a proposed budget with as part of the short session, suggesting that there be an increase in the legislative increase for state employees. And there was some chatter from one of the, I think the House leader, saying that that would be on the table. I want to be really clear. I want that more than anybody. this is also, the revenue forecast is also one-time money. It is not a recurring surplus, which means it's hard to fund things like raises with a non-recurring dollars, because people expect the money, and you don't want us to give, or not us, you don't want the state to give money that then we can't continue to pay. So I'm trying to put some credence in the statements that those folks have made, but I'm also being a realist in saying that that money may not come to fruition. Somebody notes bonus. I think we'd all welcome that. Those of us in HR would like us to follow one of the bonus patterns we've used in the last decade, because we're sort of tired of having a new one every time the budget comes out. Because as you might expect, coming up with the mechanics to put it together and put them in your paychecks are a little bit more complicated. But we're looking at that and tracking it, and hopefully I'm able to come back to you with more news about whether there is more money in your pockets come July or longer, but we think July, or whether there's something to be adjusted. I'd love to say they're going to fund some of our deferred maintenance, Arlene. There are a number of priorities that folks are pitching from across the state for that surplus. And it's an election year, so you can infer what you like about all of that. So that's the financial and budget update. I want to congratulate you on making it through another academic year. Almost. We've got a few more days till commencement. And if you're anything like me, it is a signal of another year well done, but it is not a signal of the work being finished. And I know, I hope all of you take a deep breath following commencement. For those of you who are directly student facing, you get an opportunity to move a little more freely, breathe a little more deeply, or like me, not worry about backing into an undergraduate walking through my parking lot. But they always have headphones in. That's my biggest fear. I'm going to back into someone. But really, I cannot thank you all enough for the work that you've done to get us through another academic year. And I hope you all get a little bit of a break and some relief, and take some time and use that much earned vacation or well-earned vacation as we approach the summer, and we'll continue at it. I don't have a lot of additional updates other than I was at a UNC system meeting a week ago, and we had a really interesting conversation about the upcoming transition to Aetna from Blue Cross Blue Shield. I know there will be a lot more time for us to give you full details about that, and I am by no means the expert spokesperson. But I know that this has caused a lot of consternation for a lot of people. And I just want to tell you, I left that conversation with my colleagues from across the state, as well as with the system, as well as with the state folks, feeling much better. And part of that is just a reminder that Aetna is replacing Blue Cross Blue Shield, but what they're replacing them as is really just a third-party administrator. What happens is the state health plan contracts with a third-party administrator to deliver the services. Blue Cross Blue Shield has never chosen what is covered, chosen our physicians, chosen our services. That is all determined by the state health plan. The same will be true of Aetna. Every provider that currently, excuse me, provides through Blue Cross Blue Shield has been invited to provide through Aetna. They ran an assessment and looked at the claims from 2021, the year they had. 99% of the claims submitted through Blue Cross Blue Shield would have been covered through Aetna. So likely in our area, the chances that your provider would not be covered under Aetna are very, very low. Though we encourage you to contact them, and you can do that now. They've all been given the opportunity to contact them and say, will you be covered, or will you take Aetna when the transition happens in January? They've all been given the opportunity. They've all been reminded several times. If they are not participating in Aetna at this point in time, it is a choice of the provider, not of Aetna. So, and obviously there's some the stuff that the providers have to figure out. But in terms of the compensation rates, my understanding is everything is the same. So it is up to the providers though to select in to Aetna. And they have been, they hired extra people to help make sure that's happening. So there are some concerns in a few rural areas about getting that 1% that's not covered, but that does not seem to be the impact for the larger triangle area. But again, please, by all means, you can start contacting your providers now if you want to find out if they are going to be covered. A couple other things that are going to come with the Aetna transition that we don't currently have with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which I think are sort of interesting and helpful. One is there will be a 24-hour nurse line, which is not a service we currently have, but I know many of you find yourself in a position, if you're anything like me, where I'm not sure if I should really go be seen for this, or I think I probably just have a sinus infection again. Could I get meds for that sort of thing? The nurse on-call service will be available to everyone as part of the practice. There will also be teledoc services, meaning you will be able to do some telemedicine. That is a service you would sign up for, but as I understand it, there would not be an additional cost to do so through the program. And then they will also offer both a health concierge and some lifestyle and condition coaching. So if you have complicated medical needs, say you've got kidney disease or heart disease or diabetes, and you need tracking of multiple physicians or connecting of those things, there is a program built in for those through. Obviously not all of these are going to be things that everybody needs, but they come as additional services as a result of this arrangement, this third-party administrator arrangement that we did not have with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And as I understand it, that was one of the reasons that the state health plan was interested in this model or in this third-party administrator because of some of the additional services. So you should have received Aetna information in the mail. Yep, they're starting a lot of training training and mailing right now. And the higher date for employees to, sorry, I'm reading these comments. So that was the only one that's related to the Aetna, I think, the training from Aetna. Yes, you can download their app. Somebody wrote, yes, the app is great, and download it. And then you can also begin to find out, you can do some searches. If it's not already there, they will be there about whether your providers are covered. So you can both call them now, but then they'll make them available in the app here shortly. Many of these other questions are talking about raises. Let's see, violation of some bottom line if there aren't funds to allow for these raises. I'm not sure I'm not sure I understand the one from Elizabeth. We can talk about that. Is there a plan for future discussions of duplicating the EHRA bonus program to SHRA employees? There is a bonus available to bonuses are available to both SHRA and EHRA employees. The only difference is SHRA employees are only eligible for sign-on and retention bonuses. EHRA employees have the ability to have a performance bonus built into their performance structure. Those are not very widely used across campus. They're relatively complicated to put together, but those are not available to SHRA, and that's not something we have local authority to do. But we do have sign-on and retention bonuses available to SHRA employees now. And then what's the hire date for employees to receive the 3% pay increase? I do believe it's June 30th, as Keith notes, but we need to see the written guidance as it comes out again, of course. And then the recent transition of vacant SHRA exempt to EHRA non-exempt has been a little opaque. How compensation structure and limits have transitioned in the student services impact positions has been surprising. Yeah, I won't deny that this has been confusing. And we actually had a lengthy conversation about the transition from SHRA to EHRA at our in-person HR council meeting. And part of the challenge is they had the authority and went to the legislature to get the statutory authority to transition. And once they got the authority, they made it happen right away, but the range adjustments are lagging. So we've got this like really awkward period in between. What we're hoping, or what they're hoping, and I guess by extension we are hoping, is that once we get through this awkward period in between, everybody will realize the long-term benefits. I won't deny it's complicated. I wish I could make it better and easier. There's a lot of things that if I could wave a magic wand, I would make better and different and easier. Unfortunately, this is the structure we work in, and we're doing everything to make it as smooth as possible. If there are things that we can be doing to help you in these individual cases, by all means, reach out. Did I miss any questions on this bunch?
I had two things.
Yep.
So first, a question around SHRA bonuses. I think there's been some misconception, at least maybe this is my understanding, and I was told differently. Do SHRA retention bonuses require an offer in hand in order to provide a retention bonus? I've been told, I understood that it required an offer, but I've been told it did not.
No, my understanding, and I don't know who, Link is out today, so I don't know who's on here, but my understanding is they do not.
Okay.
But let me confirm that and get back to you, because I have been known to get ahead of my skis, and
If I have this misunderstanding and uncertainty, I'm sure others do as well.
yeah,
So I think the long-standing kind of notion was that SHRA retention bonuses required an offer, but if they do not, that is a good news and a really great tool for managers and across the
yeah.
university.
And the reason I don't think they do is because we can do a sign-on bonus for new employees, and then we can do a retention bonus for people who are currently in the job that if the sign-on folks then essentially are getting more, we can even it out with a retention bonus, which is the reason I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
But again, this is one of those areas where if I could wave a magic wand, I would make the rules the same, but yeah.
The other thing isn't a question, it's more of a comment, is to say, we would love to partner with HR this coming fall to potentially provide some sort of like community meeting or session with Joe Williams, another one of Keith's favorite human beings, to potentially kind of, answer some questions around the conversion, especially as we get closer to open enrollment. So potentially
Absolutely.
a September timeline, so we can get folks on a call or a webinar. And we could kind of co-host or co-sponsor a community meeting to address some of those questions folks are bound to have.
Absolutely. And I mean, the demands on the benefits and leave team have been outstanding in the last couple of years as we've navigated a bunch of transitions, and as folks have had different reasons to either request leave or prepare for retirement or whatever it may be. We've got a top-notch team over there. Keith knows, he's interacted with some of them. Some of you others have as well. They're always eager to be of help. And sometimes people don't know exactly what they don't know or what they need to ask. But by all means, we're happy to have Joe and his team come out and help, to partner, or whatever it may be. We're happy to engage in that conversation.
Great. And to speak on that partnership, I hope you all know that we're here to advocate for you and your team in anything HR needs to do y'all's jobs, because it is really tough and y'all have had a lot on your plate over the past couple of years with the COVID pandemic and the Great Resignation and all the things.
Well, I appreciate that. And we are really grateful to be partners with all of you in this. There has been a lot of change, and I think enduring the change as we do in the moment can be really, really complicated. I hope with a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, we're able to look back and say, a handful of years ago, you all were saying, we have no tools, we can't retain anybody, this is a really hard place to be. And we haven't fixed everything, but we now have bonus tools in our back pocket. We've been able to provide raises the last number of years. We've come up with new ranges for SHRA employees. We're rolling out new ranges for EHRA employees. We're giving a whole bunch of SHRA employees an opportunity to convert to EHRA. And for the first time ever, I can report that turnover rates are dropping actually below pre-pandemic rates. So during the pre-pandemic for EHRA, The average was between 7 and 8%. During the pandemic, they went up to about 14%, and they're back down to 6%. For faculty, those numbers were at just under 4. They went up over 6. They're now down to 2.5%. And for SHRA, they were hovering in the 8 to 9. They went up to 15, and they're now down below 8%. So we have seen the turnover rates settle some, which says some good things. Now, those are just rates. Obviously, there's a lot more to the story, and we continue to work on improving how we hire and improving ways we engage folks. But I've sat in this meeting a bunch of times hearing like people are just departing us rapidly, and we've worked really hard to come up with tools to ensure that as you hire folks, or as the people sitting next to you come up with other opportunities, they're not just other opportunities that are better than here. And I think those are the things that we have to do to build the sort of community we want at Carolina. And I want to thank all of you for your partnership and your commitment to ensuring that we got those things done.
Yeah, definitely. And before we get to, I'm sure Jessica's on the call for her amazing wellness updates. For the benefit of the new folks on the call, we have the benefit now of having Shayna Hill, who was my predecessor in this role. She is now the chair of the staff assembly at the UNC system level. So we have folks that are advocating to Peter Hans, the Board of Governors, and the system office on staff issues. So it's really great, and we're proud to partner with HR in anything we can help advocate for to make sure we have all the tools in the toolbox, one of Becci's favorite phrases, to do the work that your team needs to do. So
perfect.
Awesome. Anything else for Becci before we turn to Jessica?
All right. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Becci.
Cheers.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I did join a little bit late this morning, which is not my usual, but so I missed a lot of the good discussions, but I am very aware of all the protests that happened last week. And I want to remind you that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Not that we need to dedicate this to 1 month, but the nation does. So I want to start that off by just going over some myths and some facts and some resources with you. So one of the common myths is that if you suffer from a mental illness, that there is no cure and you'll always suffer with it and struggle with it. And that is not true. So there is a variety of treatments that help many people get better and live healthier lives. And unfortunately, only half of people who are dealing with a mental health condition do seek treatment. So we do hope more people seek treatment, speak with counselors, whether through your EAP or through the state health plan resources, to make sure that you're addressing any kind of stressors up front before they become larger issues. And so 1 in 5 Americans are diagnosed with a mental health condition in a given year. And 46% of us will meet the criteria of a diagnosable mental health condition at some point in our lifetime. So that's nearly half of us. And half of those people develop these conditions before the age of 14. This is not uncommon these days. Adolescents are dealing with a lot more mentally than previous years, or don't have the skills to deal with those or to have those open conversations. So we are seeing mental health conditions more common in younger adolescents than we had a decade ago. So I want to take this time just to remind you to be sure that regardless of how busy your workload gets, to prioritize your mindfulness, your self-care, focus on your total well-being, be kind to others, but also be kind to yourself and stay connected to those that you care about. Some resources that we have that I speak about every month is our Wellness Wednesday webinars. Those continue starting next week throughout the month of May. We also have mindful meditation, which I think a lot of people are interested in, but not a lot of people take advantage of. So every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there is a 15-minute to 30-minute meditation session that is virtual, that is available to you. Those are conducted by the School of Medicine, as well as Mindful UNC. And they are in the afternoon at 12:15 or 12:30, depending on the day. So they're always start during that lunchtime hour. The North Carolina Botanical Gardens are hosting their Thursdays with yoga again. They also have some events happening on Thursday mornings and Thursday evenings, such as poetry, learning about different herbs and aromatherapy. So I encourage you to check those out. There is a fee for most of those, but nothing exceeds $19. I encourage you to continue referencing the Heals for Care network, which was developed a few years back. It gives all resources that you can filter through, whether you're faculty, staff, students, and also encourages that 24/7 crisis support. Guidance resources continues to be available to permanent employees. Again, that's 24/7. You can call them over the phone, but if you prefer not to, and you're looking to set up a free EAP counseling session, you can book that directly through the website these days. You do not have to go through the triage process if you do not wish to, or if you do not need immediate assistance. So do know that EAP resource is available to you. And then with the state health plan and their clear pricing project, for therapists and counselors who participate in the clear pricing project, that copay is $0 to speak with them. It is a wonderful program that was started years ago by Treasurer Fowle. And so those counselors can be currently found on the Headway website, and any counselor that is on the Headway website is a $0 copay, regardless of whether you have the 80/20 health plan or the 70/30 health plan. That is available to any of your dependents ages 13 and older. So please let me know if you have any questions about that. I ask that you show your support in addressing awareness towards Mental Health Awareness Month next week on Thursday the 16th by wearing green. And then also in the Work Well newsletter, there were 3 mental health awareness backgrounds, such as mine, if you prefer to share it that way on your Zoom meetings throughout the month, but particularly on Thursday, May 16th. There was also a calendar shared in the Work Well last Friday that gives you a mental health tip every single day. So today being the 8th, it is the tip for the day, folks, is find a small act of kindness to do for someone else, such as giving a compliment or offering a helpful hand. There are resources. I encourage you to check out the information and the flyers on the EAP site, dropping that in the chat. And then there's a mental health page with other resources as well. So I encourage you to visit that if you missed it in the newsletter that went out on Friday. With our upcoming Wellness Wednesdays, we are starting the month. Well, we had one earlier this month, but there's not one today. On the 15th is our next session. It's a brand new topic. It's getting a lot of attention. It's called creating psychological safety in the workplace. So that is the 15th. New topic, do sign up for that. Registration stays open until 24 hours before the session. The other topics throughout the month are on the 22nd, paying off debt and building wealth. The 29th, how to delegate in work and life. And June 5th is de-escalating potentially violent situations. So all of those classes, meditation sessions, webinars are found on the calendar page. So do check that out, and I dropped that off in the chat box. I'm also happy, let me know if you have any questions about mental health resources. If not, I will transition to our Governor Award nominees. And I think I dropped in the right website for who was asking for it. So for our Governor's Awards of Excellence, that nomination process closed April 12th. We received 5 nominations across 4 categories. So I'm going to let you know who those are. We had in the category of efficiency and innovation, Lita Ashley from our own Office of Human Resources was nominated for voluntarily taking on a project to audit the past 3 years of disability claims, which resulted in the university recouping $226,396. So congratulations to Lita. In the area of human relations, we had Keith's favorite, Joe Williams, also from the Office of Human Resources, nominated for living by his motto of heart, which is helping employees aspire, renew, and thrive in every sense of the meaning, in the meaning of that acronym. And, you know, he's just brought great value to the department, to the division, to the university, and really has a strong focus on work-life balance and people's well-being. Also in human resources, Trish Harris from Diversity and Inclusion was nominated for being a catalyst for change and a strong advocate for implementing equitable practices and policies, creating a community that fosters diversity rather than requires it. In the area of public service, we had employee Latoris Adams from the School of Medicine in the Department of Neurology. She was nominated for her exceptional work with the Huntington disease program and recognized that the work does not stop at the end of the clinic day as she continues to pursue supporting the life fulfillment of those living with Huntington's disease. She goes the extra mile for her patient. And then our final nominee was for the Spirit of North Carolina Award, Catherine O'Brien, Finance and Operations in Facilities Technology Group. And Catherine was nominated for this award for taking the time to celebrate employees' achievements, encouraging professional development, and hosting a community and work events where she continues to bring together GIS group meetings for the past 20 years that brings people together to learn and share information. So congratulations to our nominees. This decision will be made in August, but not publicly shared with folks until October of who won. They are competing with over 300 other individuals who are nominated for a governor's award, but we hope that we have some UNC winners this fall. And then I also wanted to bring to your attention that we have the Eat Smart, Move More, Prevent Diabetes program. This program has been offered essentially free for folks for many years. It is a program not for people who have diabetes, but for people who are at risk for developing type 2 diabetes based on clinical factors, based on family history. That program will be sunsetting for that free rate. It's pay $30 up front, meet the attendance requirement, and get your $30 back. It's a year-long program, but if you do not register by the end of August, it will not be free anymore. So if you know anyone who's interested in needing some help to prevent diabetes because they're at risk or have a strong family history, please encourage them to sign up to this program so that they don't end up paying over $400 to take it in the future. I want to let you know that our May recipe feature this month is that from the cooking demo at the Total Wellbeing Expo. So you'll find that on our Total Wellbeing library. And that we are starting to recruit our wellness champions for the fall semester already. So our first interest session will be next week on the 16th. We'll have an additional interest session at the end of the month on the 31st. as well as 2 in July. If anyone is interested in becoming a wellness champion, they can join an interest session or sign up to become a champion by August 2nd, or to nominate a colleague to be a champion. And before I leave you here today, I do want to follow up that we did track down the mystery of Arlene's question regarding the Amtrak discount. The Amtrak discount does exist. It's 15% off of local travel within the state, making that Raleigh-Durham trip to Charlotte really easy. There are 22 blackout dates, so you will not receive the discount on the blackout dates. But I will drop the website. You have to go through the specific website. One's a flyer, one's a website, but these are both here for you to click on and explore. If you use Amtrak to go anywhere in the state, know that you get 15% off as a state employee.
Okay, so for the new folks on the call, I just want to give a shout out to Jessica, because she has been on this hunt for many, many months now to figure out an answer to Arlene's question. So Jessica, you're the best. That's so
Well, I appreciate that, Katie. I want to let you know that Link gave me a suggestion. I know he's not here to take credit today, but he's like, you should contact the State Office of Human Resources. So that's what I did. They let me know about it, and they must have gotten in touch with someone locally, not, within the Raleigh area, and they gave me a call and we got that answer. So it is not on our website because the gentleman I spoke with has not returned his formal discount paperwork. So I will follow up with him, but do know that this discount does still exist with you. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, but you get 15% off of travel throughout North Carolina using it when you ride Amtrak.
awesome.
Or Greensboro, yes, or Greensboro, all right.
Sarah, you've had your hand up for a while, or you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
I did. I thought better of it.
Okay, no worries. Any questions for Jessica? Did you have anything else, Jessica?
That's all for me.
Any questions? All right. Well, thank you as always, Jessica, and I'll definitely pass along the emailed updates after the meeting. So thank you so much for all of your help. Okay, we're moving on to the next section of our agenda, and just a little coaching for our new folks on the call of what our consent agenda is and how it works, because I know y'all are new and don't know. So the consent agenda really contains the stuff within that we're potentially going to consider and take for a vote all together. The committee updates are usually listed under the committee or the consent agenda, but there is an ability for committee chairs to pull out one of the committee reports if they wanted to kind of talk about them actually in the meeting, other than just voting on them as a part of the consent agenda. Our minutes are always a part of the consent agenda, which Matt sends out separately. So really what happens with the consent agenda is I bring it forward. If any committee chairs have anything they want to pull out, we pull those out, and then there's a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. It's seconded, and then we vote. So with all of that said, are there any committee chairs who want to pull out any of their committee updates to talk about them during the meeting, or no?
Katie, can we do a brief blood drive recap?
We can indeed.
And can we do a quick garden update?
Garden and blood drive, yes. Anyone else? Okay.
Personnel issues.
Personnel issues, okay. Personal
Hey,
issues.
Katie, I'm sorry I couldn't get off mute. This is Teresa. I do want to pull out community service to speak about the Habitat for Humanity.
Awesome. So all of community service, personal issues.
Can I pull out DEI?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
All right. With those committees pulled out of the consent agenda, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Laura Pratt. And I move to
I
approve the
second.
So I hear Laura Pratt moved and Elizabeth seconded. We're gonna do this by acclamation. So really what that means is I'm gonna ask if there's anybody opposed, and if there's no one opposed, the consent agenda will pass. So are there any opposed to passing the consent agenda with the committees withdrawn? All right, hearing none, the consent agenda passes. So we'll move right into committee updates that were pulled. So community service, Teresa, if you want to go first, and then we'll do the blood drive and community garden.
Yes, I just wanted to update that I have finally made contact with the guy from Habitat for Humanity, and they are working on a project that is, I think it's a large project that's building a community center. I believe it's in Orange County. I'm still trying to get all the details. And so basically what they do is they have 3 days each week that they are doing things there. And so my understanding is we can schedule to come out one day. And so it looks like we could possibly do something in June with this project. So I just wanted to mention that. And then I can get out more details as soon as I get that information back from the gentleman that I've been talking with.
Awesome, that sounds great. Next up is the blood drive, Laura.
Yeah, so we had the 36th annual Carolina Blood Drive this past Wednesday. There was, a small activity on campus the day before that kind of made things challenging, but I am so impressed with the full Carolina and broader community for coming out. We had 95 volunteers. We had 74, I think, first-time donors. And all total, we had 430 units of blood collected. So that has the potential to impact 1,290 people. That's a lot of lives saved. So I just want to take a moment to give so much appreciation to everyone who was involved, from the planning committee to the volunteers, to the donors, to people who help spread the word across campus, or, the broader Triangle community. You all are amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And one final plug is, as at least half of you know, I am rolling off the forum. So next year, Renata will be leading the charge of the Carolina Blood Drive. And so if there are any new delegates who are looking to get involved with the committee, this is a great one to be involved with. You primarily join the community service committee. Thank you, Keith. And can also get involved with the blood drive. So please consider that. If you have questions about the committee, about our work, please reach out to Renata directly. And I think that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Laura. We appreciate you and Renata so much. There was a hot minute there on Tuesday afternoon where we didn't know if we were going to have a drive or not. So I'm so glad that we were able to do that amazing work for the community and had everybody bleeding Carolina blue for a good cause. So awesome. Arlene, community garden updates.
For those who are not on the list, the garden has 6 new accessible beds, and they are larger than the old accessible beds.
Awesome.
They put in a new drainage installation so that the paths will not get washed away with heavy rain, at least hopefully. They've had a really good spring, so doing 2 distributions per week. And again, well attended by all 3 shifts. They've been good response on the work days, like 20-some volunteers per work day. Summer will be slower because most of the students will be gone. So this is a good time if you're like, I don't want a crowd, good time to volunteer. And recently they were able to get permission to get a limited number of parking spaces in the Nash lot, so community volunteers can park nearby instead of going, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? There's the 2 beehives, solar powered greenhouse. The compost is just rocking along, and they've got the funding to expand the garden with 2 new 40 by 40 40 by 4 foot beds. So, and they
Awesome.
want to do, they're looking for funding to build a pergola to provide shade because the tree that was providing shade died and had to be removed. So, yeah.
Bummer. Awesome. Thanks for those updates. Diversity, equity, inclusion, Rebecca, Lori, others, updates from DEI committee?
Good morning. I think my only update is that we will be having a final end of the year meeting next week in person for the very first time since I've been on the committee. So if anybody has not been invited to that but would like to join us for a very healthy discussion about things that are currently going on with the Board of Governors and with other things on campus, we would love to have you join us. The meeting is going to be held at the law school. Hang on. It's
12:30?
commencement week and I am like so in commencement mode that I can't remember anything else. It will be Tuesday, the 14th at 12:30 here in the law school building in our boardroom. You can hop on the RU shuttle or the U shuttle and it'll drop you off, or you can just wander over here. Service permits if you have one. I didn't say that out loud. But we'll have pizza and salad. Just shoot me an email and we'll add you to the invite. But we would love to have your participation and your input in what I'm sure is to be a very good conversation. So thank you all. And we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday if you can join us.
Awesome. All right, next up, personnel issues.
Thank you, Katie. My camera is not cooperating. So I'll do it without camera in case it, okay, there it comes. First of all, let me say, I apologize if I start coughing. I've got a chronic cough and it's coming back. Wanted to mention, we had a meeting last month and probably the biggest topic of the meeting was the fact that the UNC Board of Governors is voting on new diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. We've got added a lot of links. There's a lot of coverage in the news. We're just barely scratching the surface and trying to keep that updated with any information, but I have added that to the team site under the personnel issues and topics. Created a new topic and have a file there with all the links that we have at least up to now. If anyone has any others or any other information, please just go there and plug it in or text me and I will add it for you. That's definitely a hot topic we've got to stay on top of. I think the plan at the last, and my computer's not cooperating to scroll. I believe it's targeted to be voted on this month. And Katie, I don't know if you have any other updates or anything you want to say on that, but we've added all the links that we had out there.
I will say that any personnel issues folks, it was a pretty robust conversation at personnel issues. Any folks that are on that group that want to come to the DEI committee meeting next week, I feel like that's a great place to kind of debrief and discuss our kind of response to that. I will say things are in the works for a potential response from some campus leaders, myself included, that may be coming soon, but that's still in the works. So more to come on that, but I would say for folks interested in that conversation, I really do encourage you to reach out to Rebecca and to join us for that in-person meeting at the law school to debrief and discuss impending changes to the DEI policy.
Thank you.
Big deal. Thanks, Sharon. All right, folks. Well, that does it for committee updates. Any other committee updates that folks want to share, y'all can feel free to email them to me and I'll include them. For new delegates, I usually try and get a post-meeting kind of debrief email out that includes kind of some of the things discussed in the meetings. If there's any presentations or slides that special presenters brought, I include those. I include Jessica's wellness updates. It's a kind of helpful debrief and a tool to use to communicate out to your constituencies things that we talked about in the meeting. And it always includes the meeting recording link as well for folks to share. So yeah, more to come with that email after. It usually comes in the day or two after, just as soon as I collect all the things. But yes, if any other committees want to share any updates, feel free to email those to me and I'll include those in the post-meeting debrief. So let's move on to new business. We're running a little bit behind, but I think we've got enough time to deal with everything we need to deal with. I'm going to kind of swap things really quick. We're going to do officer elections, the initial call for nominations first. And then we'll move into the bylaws revisions first reading because that's a little bit more lengthy. So with that said, officer elections are coming up in June, so we have some time to consider, but we usually take some time in May to open up the floor for nominations for the various roles that are up for election this coming year. Those roles include the chair position, a newly created, as long as the bylaws revisions pass, position, the chair-elect position, our vice chair position, our secretary position, and our treasurer position. So those are the officer elections that are up for grabs. New folks, don't be shy and don't be scared. If you are interested in a leadership role on the forum, you're welcome to submit your name for consideration. But with that said, I'm going to open up the first position for nominations, and that is chair position. Do I have anyone that wants to throw their hat in the ring?
Can we nominate someone else, Katie?
Yes.
I would like to nominate Katie Musgrove.
Lord, I was afraid of that. Thank you for that. I accept your nomination. I do plan to run for one final year. My hope is that somebody will take up the call to run for the chair-elect position to serve and to shadow me for the next year so that I can roll off gracefully, pretty please. Oh my God. I'm very tired. So any other nominations for chair? So yeah. Oh, before we continue, sorry, one thing I forgot to mention. In June, when we hold the officer elections, that is when candidates that are nominated for these various roles and are going to be on the ballot will have a chance to make speeches, candidate speeches. So they'll have about 5 minutes to share kind of, any comments they have to the group at the June meeting before we vote. So that will be coming in June. Any other nominations for the chair position? Keith, we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. It's weird.
How
I
about?
think he's
Yeah,
silently
perfect.
nominating himself.
No, I did not. No, I did not, ma'am.
No.
Oh, no. Keith has zero desire to be the chair of the employee forum. I've been saying that for 3 years, and I will say it again. No, I was going to say, Katie, just in case you may have said something, but I'm over here trying to put out a little bit of a fire that I created. Laura Pratt, I'll have to talk to you later about it. Did you mention to all the new delegates that they are eligible? Like,
Yeah.
there's no time period of service that you have to perform. Okay,
I
sorry.
did indeed. No, you're fine.
Laura Pratt, I'm sending you a message.
I will also say before we get into the other positions that we do have 2 folks who are going to be leading our election process this year. It's Jacob Womack and Matt Teal have volunteered to do that, and those folks aren't up for any of those positions that are being elected. So they're going to help guide us through the elections in June. So that's great. Annetta.
I just have a question.
Yes.
And hopefully this will help the new delegates as well. Could you provide a little background about the intersection of the vice chair and the chair-elect positions?
Sure.
And also the treasurer position, with someone serving as in an interim role? And that
We
now
did have the treasurer step away from the university, and Bridget has taken up that position in an interim capacity. I appointed her throughout the rest of Tracy's term, but that's a one-year position, so it gets reelected every year along with the secretary and vice chair and chair. We'll learn more about the kind of intersection of all of the different kind of leadership roles under the new system with the chair-elect in process during the bylaws revisions, but just a little debrief that the chair-elect will be elected in the second year of the employee forum chair's role. So it will essentially look like you'll be a year as chair-elect, you'll serve for 2 years now in the new system as chair, and then you'll serve as a immediate past chair for 1 year. So it's a 4-year-long commitment. The chair-elect, if the chair has to step away for some reason and there is a chair-elect in place, that chair-elect will not accede to the chair. It will be the vice chair that takes over until the end of the current chair's term to allow that chair-elect that full year of onboarding that they were allotted, so that they can kind of figure out all of the things and learn the ropes and aren't forced into the position right away. Say a chair leaves and it's only been a month since the chair-elect was elected. So it preserves that kind of ramping up and onboarding period and allows the vice chair the ability to take over and lead things in the chair's stead if something were to happen and the chair had to step away. So the vice chair kind of preserves most of its authority and abilities under the previous system. And the chair-elect is really just an ability for us to have kind of leadership transition that is smooth and graceful. So did I describe that correctly, Jacob? I think that pretty much
No, you did
captures
good. Yeah, and again, I think we'll talk a little bit more in depth on that here in a bit.
Yeah. Any other nominations for the chair position? And this will be unique. The last year, it will be a 1-year term until the new system is in place after bylaws revisions. Okay. Now we're transitioning to the chair-elect position. Again, this is a new position that isn't technically created yet until we pass our bylaws revisions. But in the interim, until June, we wanted to give folks the opportunity to tentatively express their interest in this position should it get created with the passage of the bylaws revisions. So is there anyone interested in throwing their hat in the ring for the chair-elect position?
I will say that I am interested, very tentatively, hesitantly, and with some sense of foreboding, but I'm going to toss my hat in the ring anyhow.
Awesome. We will add you to the list of candidates for that position. Other nominations?
Could I get just a tiny bit more clarity on how the chair-elect is different?
Yes, sure. So essentially this is a new position that it's very similar to the faculty council just passed a similar kind of process where their chair-elect serves for a year under the current chair to onboard to the role, negotiate all of their various things that they get with the role. And it's a similar kind of thought process behind our creation of the role to give some continuity and some like leadership transition that allows the chair the time to impart their kind of wisdom on the chair-elect and to have the person's department figure out all of the nitty-gritty of there is a chair stipend. So it allows departments to kind of figure that out before the chair gets into the role, the chair-elect gets into the permanent chair position. Trying to think of other ways to describe it, but
no, that's helpful. This is like an intermediary step to being chair.
Correct. It allows them the time to meet all of the people, to start going to some of the things like board of trustees and, you know, meetings with the chancellor, and it just gives them the groundwork so that they can actually use their 2 full years as chair to actually be effective and do the role. Because I know my first year as chair, it was a lot. Shayna, I shadowed Shayna a little bit before I became chair, but it was a very informal process. So it allows the chair some ability to have a path to transition out of the role, because I've also like been in the role, and it's hard to find kind of someone's willing to step up every single year. So just a smoother leadership kind of transition, and gives fresh new voices kind of a fresh turn of thoughts and ideas. So Jacob, adding to my rambling.
Yeah, well, and also to answer David's question in the chat.
Oh.
But yeah, no, in essence, if you are interested in the chair position, starting next year, you will need to have served as the chair-elect. It'll automatically feed into it. There will, moving forward, starting next year, the election for the chair will actually be, in essence, the essence of the election of the chair-elect.
That is exactly correct. Great, thanks. Yeah, Ken, your great comment. I think it models several other things. It also models the staff assembly, which is the UNC system level of body. So that chair system is very similar. Where does the vice chair move to the chair-elect? Then, oh, the vice chair could nominate themselves or have someone nominate them for the chair-elect role when it is up for election, if the vice chair is interested in that role. Keith has been very vocal that he is interested in vice chairing, but not so much ascending to the role of chair. So there's very much an ability for the vice chair position for folks that are interested in helping kind of lead the employee forum without actually ever aspiring to be chair itself. So
And to kind of continue my tradition of answering questions in the chat, to Sherry, I'm not entirely sure how to say that, I apologize. The vice chair does not automatically move into the chair or the chair-elect position. The vice chair's primary responsibility is to support, and they'll mostly be moving up with kind of like day-to-day stuff. Like if the chair is unable to run a meeting or something, then they'll fill in those kind of day-to-day operations. So if say we did lose the actual chair pretty early in the term, then honestly the chair-elect and the vice chair would kind of work together to sort those roles out. But the vice chair is more of a support position within the year. Their job is to handle it's basically to support duties that the chair can't handle in that moment, or in the election, in the moment that we just need someone to manage it. They will not automatically become the chair-elect or the vice chair or the chair.
Keith, oh my God. Liz, you had your hand up. Did you have a question?
I just want to endorse this as a structure. I think it is really important because it also protects the vice chair in the vice chair role, while it allows people to be prepared to assume the chair role. We did this in an organization that I was part of, and it was just the best thing ever. And speaking as a big fan of Mr. Spock, who wanted to never be captain, but did so much, you know, you really, really benefit from a system like this. So how soon can we vote on it?
We will be voting on it this meeting, and I will, spoil it. Maybe we have a special meeting later this month that I'm going to announce shortly. So, yeah, great questions, and it's very important context for folks deciding if they want to throw their hat in the ring. So, especially for newer folks. Ida, you can nominate anyone and they can say yes or no. So would you like to formally make that nomination out of the chat?
I am not sure if she's up to it, but I think Elizabeth will be a great elect chair.
Elizabeth, you can accept or reject a nomination from the floor at any time. So let us know if you would like to accept the nomination and be listed on the ballot.
I am so honored, Ida, and I will just say, I will look into it. I'm in the middle of an HR process that is a nightmare, and I operate still the smallest research department in the entire university. I love what perspective that gives me, but the work ain't going away.
I'll say this, Liz, if you decide that you would like to accept it, you can do so from the floor in June as well. So
I will say that it will be great for all of us to get more information about what the workload looks like and how not to let people down, because we all face similar points in time when we're stressed to the max. oddly enough, for those of us in clinical research in the School of Medicine, it's not the same times of year for y'all. So it gets pretty interesting. Thank you, Ide. I am honored.
All right, so we will tentatively pencil you in, Liz, and let us know if you choose to accept or reject, and we'll formalize that in June. Any other chair-elect nominations? All right, hearing none, moving on to the next position, vice chair. Any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Keith Hines.
Keith, do you accept?
I got one more in me.
Okay. Keith is going to be on the ballot for vice chair. Other nominations? Susie, is this nomination in relation to the vice chair? Sorry, I just saw your comment.
It is. Did I get it in or the?
Yes, you
Okay.
got it in on time. David Bragg, you have been nominated for the vice chair position. Would you like to accept this nomination and appear on the ballot?
There's no chance of winning against Keith, and he's doing a great job anyway, so this year I will decline.
Okay. Valid, but don't let Keith go unchallenged. It's always good. Any other nominations for vice chair? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move on to the next role. Secretary, nominations for secretary of the employee forum.
Nominate Tiffany Carver.
James, was that what you were about to say?
Yeah, I was gonna nominate Tiffany. Yeah.
Tiffany, do you accept this nomination?
I do.
Okay. Tiffany will appear on the ballot for secretary. Other nominations? Okay, hearing none, let me check my chat. Next position, we have treasurer. Who would like to nominate for the treasurer role? Annetta, your hands up. Are you nominating yourself?
I don't know if there's a precedent for it, but
Yes, self-nominations are allowed.
The what?
Self-nominations are indeed allowed, so.
Okay. Well, I was considered the last time, I guess for the interim role, or maybe I considered it. I can't remember the thought process back then, but I'm willing to try it, so I will self-nominate this time.
All righty, that sounds great.
If Annette is uncomfortable self-nominating, I will nominate her.
Awesome. All right, so we have Annetta Streeter for the treasurer role. Any other nominations for treasurer? And again, folks can nominate from the floor in June too. Okay, Keith has a nomination in the chat. Keith, you're nominating Bridget Ironside. I don't know if Bridget's on the call or not. Bridget is on the call. Are you accepting the nomination, Bridget? Okay, excellent. She said yes in the chat. So we'll have Annetta Streeter and Bridget. Matthew Stedman has also tossed his hat in the ring in the chat for treasurer. Matthew, thank you for that. All right, we got 3 folks. Anybody else interested in nominating themselves or others for the treasurer role? Okay. All right, hearing none, that's a great group of folks. But again, we will turn back to this in June. We will open up the floor in June and start things off with final calls for nominations so that we can kind of finalize the ballot. And then later in the meeting is when we'll kind of go through the speeches and sending out ballots and all of that fun stuff. So thank you in advance to Jacob and to Matt Teal for leading that effort in June. So more to come in June. For those who are tentative, make sure you're thinking about things. And yeah, we're looking forward to that process unfolding in June so that we're ready for our July retreat. We will hit the ground running with our new leadership in place. Okay, moving to the fun part of the meeting, the bylaws revisions. For new folks that are joining us, I kind of previewed this at the orientation that we are in the process of doing some pretty substantive additions to our bylaws. We voted on kind of an overall proposal of what we were looking to do on these substantive changes back in February, I believe. So we got kind of a consensus of the body at that point in time that we were interested in making these more substantive changes that include adding that chair-elect system and changing kind of that process. We included some changes to our staff assembly election process to clean that process up a little bit. We included, let me share my screen actually, and I'll give folks the full rundown of the proposal as it was voted on back in February for our new folks to see. So like I said, this was voted on and passed. So we used this to kind of work with a group here at the law school at UNC that helped us to kind of implement these kind of more substantive changes into our bylaws to make sure everything was included correctly. So like I said, creation of the chair-elect system, updates to the chair position in terms of like creating that kind of year, 2 year, and in a year is immediate past chair process. Creation of that immediate past chair position. Like I said, revisions to the staff assembly election process to clean that up and align those with our other elections for other officers. So that description is here. We revised a little bit of our electoral process to make sure that there's not conflicts of interest of who's managing our elections, so that folks that are up for a position aren't actually having their hand on the scale. And then updates to our term limit section to make sure that that is only in effect when we are we don't have vacant positions. So we're not going to make folks roll off essentially if we have like no one to fill them. But if in years like we had this year, where there was more folks that ran for a position than got elected, than we had seats to fill, then we would move towards kind of having folks roll off after their 6 years on the employee forum, to give folks new folks a chance to kind of serve as well. So kind of tweaking that a little bit. And then there was some other minor language changes, but we didn't do a whole lot of work with that with the law school team because we wanted to make it sure that it was clear that these things were being considered and this is the main changes because it was a lot. So we'll likely do another round of bylaws revisions this coming year that will do kind of some of the minor tweaks and changes where we'll have like a redlined version available for y'all to consider. Sorry. That just kept this process a little bit cleaner because we did have the consensus and buy-in from folks to go ahead and make these bigger changes, but in making some smaller changes and making sure things are refreshed and how we actually do things. We'll do that kind of more nitty-gritty stuff in the coming year. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing this portion of the screen and share with y'all, and then I'm going to turn the floor over to Jacob, who's going to help us. I'm going to call you out, Jacob, and have you help because I hate talking at people for this long. And folks, I'm sure don't want to hear from me the entire meeting. So I'm going to share my screen with the current version of the bylaws that is up for a vote this time around. I don't know that we're going to read through everything. That's a really long document. We sent it to y'all in advance. We can have a discussion on the first reading, so to speak, with any folks' questions and everything, and then we'll move to a vote. And again, this will be considered a second time, but I'll let Jacob talk about that in a second. So sharing the screen now, letting Jacob kind of lead the discussion from here.
So, I guess actually before we go into it, I suppose I'd rather actually see if there are questions ahead of time or concerns that came up, just so we can kind of hit those early, so that I don't just kind of drone on for the next 10 minutes and everybody's like, yeah, no, we read it, we got it. I'm also will be very impressed if everyone this close to commencement had time to sit here and read through the entire revision. All right, come here, chat. Oh, where did you post your first question, Marlene?
In the document, and Katie answered it.
I
Okay.
did. So
Oh,
Arlene
yeah,
had
that
a
one.
question about kind of some of the wording of something. And again, a lot of the stuff that needs cleaned up that's a little worded a little weirdly or isn't really how we've been doing things and needs kind of refreshed. Some of that work group is going to be done next year because it just was tough to try and fold some of that in with these more substantive changes. So I agree that that is worded weirdly and we should probably tweak that a little bit.
Yep, okay. If that's kind of all we got, yeah, Katie, if you just kind of want to scroll down, I'll just kind of, I mean, you can
Let me
start at the top,
start
right?
from the top. Yeah.
Yeah, but so just start from the top and I'll just kind of do brief touches on each one. Establishment didn't really change. That is pretty much what it is. Purpose also no real change. Eligibility, all that's kind of the same. Representation, again, most of that has changed. Term in office, that has gotten a little bit just gently touched, but that is kind of one of those points that we may do a little more minor tweaks in the coming year, just to kind of get things nailed down a little bit more. As and again, all of this is dependent on this body approving these changes. This is not just me telling you how it's going to be. Re-election hasn't changed much. Special appointments, those are all pretty standard. Did not do too much shifted in that. We've already discussed Arlene's point, which again, there are a couple different spots throughout this document where that is going to be an issue. Ex officio, we did a little bit better job defining that, especially since now that the chair emeritus position will be considered also an ex officio. So we just want to make sure that was very clear. Honorary delegates, if you're a new delegate, a lot of times we will use those as ways of kind of celebrating people who have done a lot either for the forum or the university. Also folks who it is not uncommon for like past chairs to be named honorary delegates and stuff, so that we can continue to kind of maintain that service and that knowledge that we've had without necessarily expecting them to maintain as much work. We'll also do that for, I think we gave Kevin Guskowicz one as well when he left to go to Michigan. Participation has not changed much. Our expectations are still pretty much the same. We expect you to be on at least one committee and also to try to at least 2 of the high level VC kind of level meetings throughout the year. Other employees didn't really change, although I do want to make sure that we're clear with this. You do not have to be a member of, honestly, you don't even have to be an employee of the university to come to these. You are welcome to come to these. We follow public meeting rules. However, I do encourage folks to come as non-delegates. I attended a few of these before I was a delegate, and that was partly what pushed me into going ahead and joining this, seeing that there were people actively having difficult, tough conversations. Community meetings, those have not changed. We were required to do those once a year. Quorum and voting did not shift any of that terminology, same kind of rules. The election procedure did get a little tweak. Again, mostly due to the positions, specifically the creation of the chair-elect. So that's a little bit different because that will have to happen every other year as opposed to every year like we have been doing things, which so
And
those have
a preview here too, under election procedure, you'll see this membership and engagement terminology throughout this section. When we get to the committee section, we'll talk about, there's a couple of our committees that we proposed name changes, which was not a part of our original proposal, but we're timely and we're already under consideration for other reasons. So that is language terminology change that was folded into this bylaws revision process.
and those are almost exclusively just renaming the committees as opposed to any substantive changes, just kind of trying to make sure that they're accurate and correctly reflect the work of those committees, because those have grown since they were created. Election process, again, we've kind of already started it, but has not changed much. Nominations, write-ins are allowed. The electoral divisions, that's kind of how we get our SHRI divisions. That still has not changed. Representation has not changed. Purpose has not changed. Election of staff assembly delegates, that has changed. That was one of the substantive changes that we were talking about earlier, trying to do that. There is still a little bit of wiggle room in this because there is discussion at the staff assembly level that they may be changing their bylaws. So we're we're going to go with what we have with the anticipation of the changes they're going to make, but at the same time, we may need to shift those in this following year if they change them in a way we don't expect. Operating year, fiscal year, nothing different. Monthly meetings, that's what we do. Those have not changed. I did mention the high level administrative meetings earlier. Those have not changed. Same with the community meetings.
I will, sorry, I'm going to pause. This is
Yep.
one of the things where like, I think we should change in future years because we have it, a very strict must be scheduled for the first working Wednesday of each month. I think that's probably going to be up for discussion and consideration this coming year. Potentially given our difficulties finding hybrid space. So again, that's just a very antiquated part of our bylaws that's been folded in there for many, many years. That I think that we could probably potentially refresh and shed some new light on that portion of the bylaws. So again, there's stuff throughout this that really like probably needs refreshed, but we didn't want to overly complicate the process this time around. So yeah.
Community meetings, talked about those. We have to do those. Committee meetings, they're their annual treat. That's a lot of fun. It's coming up. Look forward to it. Annual orientation. Again, didn't really change any of those. Employee forum responsibilities, individual grievances, did not change those. Delegate responsibilities, those did not change. They did our rules about attendance. That includes both your attendance to the full bodies as well as your committee meetings. Please be aware that being an active member of those committees is part of your responsibilities. Resignation. Yep. If you find you can't, please don't, no hard feelings. We all understand that jobs change, responsibilities are changing. The world is dynamic and we understand that. But just let folks know so that we can take steps. Information, same, true. Staff assembly delegate responsibility. While the election process has changed, their actual jobs have not. They're still pretty much doing what they have been doing, representing us and bringing back information from the system level back to here. Officers, this is where we're going to start going to some of those more substantive changes because of the changes we're trying to do. So the chair has been kind of redefined, shifting its term to a 2-year term. Also explaining kind of its role is not just to do all this normal buddy, but also to help train up the chair-elect. And there is some clarity about some questions that were asked earlier about the vice chair will assume the room chair for the remainder of the term, as opposed to the chair-elect immediately becoming the chair. But they will just kind of finish that up, which you'll see again in the vice chair. Primarily the function is day-to-day stuff. But if in the event that there is one, and if it happens earlier in their 2-year term, we could in theory also call for a special election at the end of that half term if we so choose.
I will also say this slightly, the vice chair description slightly got updated and you'll see in the membership and assignments changes that both the secretary and the vice chair serve as co-chairs of that group moving forward under the proposed change. So just want to flag that.
Which has more to do with the growing role of the membership and engagement committee. Chair-elect, nice little description of what the chair-elect is, what it does, how it's going to be held. This is all new because we have not had a chair-elect position. So if you do want to take a moment to look at this, not significantly different than positions in the past and very similar to what we talked about and that this body did approve moving forward with. So no curveballs, but it is all brand new. So if you do want to take a moment to look at it, please do so. And the same is true of the immediate past chair. Again, this hews pretty closely to what we discussed in the full body meeting when we approved moving forward with this, but it is there, some definitions of ex officio. And again, the position, instead of it being filled automatically if they're unable to do it due to constraints, whatever reasons, the position will simply just remain open. We're not going to force someone into taking those responsibilities. We're not going to call back former chair emeritus and make them work. It's like Charles Streeter, sorry, man, you're back on.
We might, I might.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't think we're going to put it in the bylaws. Secretary, treasurer, their responsibilities have stayed the same with the parliamentarian. Succession has been spelled out. It's the same type of level of succession that we had initially. Just some of the wording has changed a little bit just to make it a little bit cleaner, a little bit more obvious that we're talking about succession as opposed to, especially around the chair-elect versus the vice chair succession role. And keeping in mind that sometimes successor is about it being fully vacant as opposed to someone just being unable to make a meeting that day. Terms of office have been adjusted a little bit, just again because the changes to the chair position, chair-elect position, providing prospective candidates that has not really changed.
This
Oh,
is actually not right. I need to change
yeah, I
this.
just got that.
Yeah.
When you're up. There
Yeah.
we go. Thank you. I'm gonna have to do another deep reading. Dang it. Providing information for candidates, ongoing officers must present status reports. That's from the original one, and that has more to do with the fact that we're just as we do things, we're expected to end the year reports regardless, just part of each committee's responsibility as well as the entire body. These are the standing committees. Ad hoc committees can be formed as you want. As you've noticed, several have stayed the same, but we have had a few changes, which I think are a little further down. There we go. So we have changed both the, what's that is I can remember the new ones and I can't remember the old ones. The Leadership, Education, and Career Development Committee is the new one, and that was partly motivated by us merging with the University Managers Association, because they had something similar, and they had some scholarships that were already part of their system, as well as some management opportunities for staff on campus. So instead of kind of creating it separately, we decided to kind of roll all of those together and make it a little bit more expansive, which is similar to what happened with membership and engagement. Mostly because it's just going to be, it originally was membership and assignments, which was more about the election process and making sure people were in their committees. However, we're trying to get more stuff where we're involved more with campus, stuff like that, as well as making sure that new members feel engaged and are provided opportunities to serve or to add their voices and their strengths to these conversations. So more, instead of just like assigning stuff, also just like trying to encourage as well. Personnel committees has to change, recognition has to change, creation and continuation of other committees. This is more just kind of how we do it. Katie, I know, has done this in the past. The Community Service Committee was not an initial standing committee. Katie spearheaded that and championed it and brought it into being and continues to do good work. So thank you, Katie. Amending bylaws, that has not changed. That is how we're doing what we're doing. Election of officers, again, getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of how this is going to happen. Me and Matt are going to come through this. It'll be a Qualtrics survey as it has in the past. But you'll know, yep, I was gonna say, we need to throw that in there. Yep, kind of going on the same thing. Thank you. Yep, nominations, we're going to go into the self-nominations process are totally allowable. Someone else can nominate. You can say no, you don't have to accept a nomination. And there's a little bit more specifically about speeches, which we will have some time for June, right? Yeah, in June. Which is why we're nominating in May. So you've got a whole month to write your stump speech. No attack ads, please. So yeah. And again, keeping in mind that you may have a change of heart, so that if you do wish, there's still the opportunity to nominate yourself or to nominate another one of someone that you think might be interested in the June meeting. They just will have less time to prepare for their speeches. We will still accept nominations in the June meeting. Eligibility, really just making sure you've got at least a year to serve the term. Election, pretty straightforward. It'll be through Qualtrics. We'll go over a lot of that in day of as well. Standard voting, what you get. There is one thing that, unlike we do not accept write-in ballots or absentee ballots. It's one of the things, you want to vote, you kind of got to be there. It's mandatory part of the attendance, and write-in votes are not eligible, mostly because since this is volunteer based, if the person simply cannot do it, it is not fair for them to be forced into a position just through a write-in campaign. They have the right to say no. So instead of wasting time on a write-in campaign, we just make certain that everybody has agreed to offer to serve. The election of delegates to the staff assembly, there has been some significant change here. We're really just kind of clarifying it because it's been gotten kind of muddy in the last couple of years when we were trying to figure it out. So now the candidate receiving the majority of the votes will become a delegate, and the runner-up becomes an alternate. If we have more, because every other year we will have 2 open spots, because we do 2 of the positions will be filled by the chair and the chair-elect. But every other year there will be a position when there's only the chair and no chair-elect to fill that, at which point we will need 2 staff assembly delegates. So if we've got no chair and we are 2, that changes the election process a little bit. So in that case, no candidate receives a majority vote. The first of, I'm just going to actually read this one out because just to make absolutely certain. For years in which the chair-elect occupies 1 staff assembly seat, the candidate receiving a majority of the votes becomes a delegate and the runner-up becomes the alternate. pretty straightforward. There's one spot, we run for it. Whoever comes in second is the alternate. For years in which there is no chair-elect occupying a staff seat, the candidate receiving the majority of the votes fills the first of the 2 open seats. If no candidate receives a majority, there'll be a runoff between the 2 candidates with the most votes. Then a second round of voting will occur with the same candidates minus the winner of the first one. And again, the candidate receiving the majority of those votes will become delegate. Again, if there's no clear winner, then we'll go back to it. So in essence, when there's 2, it's the first one gets the first seat, and then we keep running off, and then we'll do a whole separate election. We're not going to do ranked choice. We're not going to do a plurality of votes, just because those can get pretty complicated, and we're having to stick with the abilities that we have within Qualtrics, which is also the ability that I have within Qualtrics, which is kind of a low bar. So we're just going to kind of do it in 2 rounds, since it's only going to happen every other year. Terms will remain the same. Alternate rules are expected. For those of you who haven't done it, thank you, Katie. I was like September.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, recall, we still have the right to recuse, pull people back. Those have not been edited or taken away. We still have the authority to do that. If for some reason the alternate's unable to serve, we have some things, special appointments are still going to follow kind of the way they do with delegates on the body. The chair will have the opportunity to appoint them. We're not going to penalize somebody for stepping up in that position. Then certification will literally be just kind of us, which, just in case you're curious as to when it was done last.
This will change once we actually vote on it.
This was the last bylaws revision, was in 2020.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Jacob. We were running very short on time, so I'm going to very quickly do this. And again, there will be a second round of voting because this is just the first reading. So we'll have some discussion here, but I would encourage folks that if they have questions or thoughts to chime in on those in the time between now and our next meeting, where we'll have the second reading, because there's just so much here and we've got some other things to do. So I encourage you all to stay on the call, please, pretty please, for another couple of minutes. So with all of that said, do I have any urgent discussion on the first reading of the bylaws before we move to a vote on this first reading?
Great job, Jacob and team.
Yes, and a huge kudos to the law school team that helped us with all of this, because this was really hard to fold in some of these more complex changes and make sure that it was all kind of, sound legally.
I'm also appreciating Jacob's reading voice. It's even better than the radio voice. It always keeps my
Agreed.
attention.
Agreed. Any other discussion? All right, I'm calling the question. So is there a motion on the floor to approve this on first reading?
I make a motion to approve the first reading of the new bylaws.
A second. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, any abstaining? All right, so the first reading passes. Again, we are going to have a second reading. This is the announcement that we're going to have a special meeting occurring on Tuesday, May 21st. This will subsume the regular employee forum executive committee meeting that's usually on that Tuesday. Although we're going to do this in the time frame we usually do our full body meeting, so from 9:15 to 11:30 instead. So I'm encouraging, this is going to be a full body meeting. We really need a full quorum of folks that come out and kind of consider this on second reading. We've got a few other things that we'll consider on second reading as well. So really important that y'all come out to this. We'll be sending an invite to get this on y'all's calendars immediately after this meeting. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, I also want to do the other announcements and questions that we have first before we move into closed session. We've got one thing to vote on in closed session, so please, delegates, stay on the call. Just give me 5 more minutes of your time to do the closed session that we need to do. So other announcements, Vice Chancellor's representatives meeting is being postponed. There was some conflicts with the Vice Chancellor's schedules for this coming Thursday, so we'll announce the new date and time for that once it is scheduled. Then we'll have our June full body meeting on Thursday, June 6th. This is a new date and time. Usually it's on Wednesday, but Wednesday is Summer Splash, which is the big facility celebration that they hold most every year. And that conflicts with our meeting. So we didn't want all of our facilities folks to not be able to attend. So we moved that to Thursday. So meeting location to be determined. We're going to have a great social and a great peer recognition award ceremony. So more to come on that. Staff Advisory Committee to the Chancellor is meeting June 12th. So looking forward to that first meeting with Lee Roberts with the Staff Advisory Committee to the Chancellor. Okay, all of that said, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into closed session to consider potential recognition and awards related things. Do I hear said motion?
I'll make a motion, go into closed meeting.
Second.
We'll do this by acclamation. Any opposed to going into closed session? All right, hearing none. We're going to move into closed session. For those that are on the call, we're going to move into a breakout room. And please do, like I said, delegates, if you could give me like maybe 5-10 minutes of your time to just consider the item that we have in closed session. The only thing that's going to happen when we come back into open session is we're going to adjourn. So folks that want to just like leave, you're welcome to. But we will have to come back into open session to formally adjourn. So with that said, Matt and Tiffany, if I could get your help to send folks into the breakout room, and we're going to consider something in closed session. So thanks everybody for being with us. And if I don't see you all upon return, thank you. And give us a couple minutes to get the breakout room coordinated.
Yeah, try it.
Actually, like, we could also just look at the list of folks that are still on the call and make sure no one that's not a delegate is on the call. Because I'm looking through this list and I'm not seeing anybody that's still on the call that isn't supposed to be here.
So new delegates, that means you stay as well. If you
Yes, new delegates stay, old delegates stay. I don't see anybody from my eyes that shouldn't be here, so can we just continue? Jacob, Tiffany, etc. I would assume we can just continue.
Yeah, there's no one that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Matt, I think, has a waiting room set up, so if new folks join, they'll stay in the waiting room, so we'll not admit anyone else. All right, folks. Please, thank you so much for giving me an extra 15 minutes of your time. I'm so sorry. I realize this is a busy day and a busy time with commencement, but you guys are all fantastic. Before we adjourn, I want to give, like Becky mentioned, the years of service recognition. I encourage you all to go to that website. There's some folks with 50 and 55 years of service at this university. The 55 folks, Donald Searing and Gil Moriarty, huge shout out, 55 years of service at this place. We love y'all and thank you for many, many years of service at Carolina. So with all of that said, do I hear a motion to adjourn for today?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I second, I third, I fourth.
We're going to do it by acclamation again. Any opposed to adjourning for today? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all so much. Welcome to the new delegates. We hope that y'all enjoyed your first meeting and looking forward to seeing y'all back again in May. And again, sorry for extra meetings in May, but we have a lot going on to close out our year and to get us ready for our next year on the employee forum. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Happy commencement if I don't see y'all before then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for the passcode.
Hey, David.
Chris, David, my pleasure.
Matt, thank you for all your help as always. I do have to sign out. I've got another meeting at 12. So thank you, everybody. Jacob.
No worries.
Ready.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Samara and Heather, I'm going to close this meeting down in approximately 30 seconds. So I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Okay, Heather, I'm closing the meeting down. Take care and thank you for sitting in. Goodbye.